As Bo said, my name is Mikey. I'm the junior high pastor here at Faith Chapel, and it is an honor to be here in front of a lot of you who I don't get to see very often, and in front of the people that I do get to see very often. Thank you for being here. Love it. So many people that serve throughout our church. It's been awesome to be a part of this weekend. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am married to my amazing, beautiful, wonderful wife. Her name is Megan, and we have been married for 5 years. We got to celebrate on Friday our 5th year anniversary, which is awesome. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad. You guys are so much more excited about marriage than the last service, so that's good. That's a good sign. We're off to a good start here. So, and we also got to create this amazing human being here, Evelyn. She's 18 months old, and she's just an absolute delight a majority of the time, and so that's been so much fun. And then we also have another baby boy due in October, and my wife is like, I love this thing, but get it out, like get it out of me. So be praying for her, please be praying for her. So I also, just a little bit about myself, I grew up in Billings. Billings has been my home for most of my life, and I grew up coming to this church. My parents raised me to know who Jesus is and to follow God, and so because of this church and because of the consistency that this church has had through Stan and through Nate and its discipling and its encouraging of young people, I'm the product of this church, and it's an honor to be able to be here before you today. Yes, it's a testament. It's really a testament just to what this church community is. And so I'm just honored and privileged to be here before you. And when Nate asked me, it was going on 3 years, coming up in December, 3 years ago, hey, do you want to be the junior high pastor? I said, I don't know. That seems pretty scary. Junior high, we all have our memories of junior high. And so I got to go and hang out with them for a couple of weeks and just absolutely fell in love with their group, the age that they are, that what they're going through, that they are so much fun. They have so much to contribute to our world, and it is just an honor and a delight to get to know them. I've made so many great friendships. Many of you are sitting up here in the front row. I love you guys so much. So what I want to talk about today is this concept of how we are as a church, as a community. We're talking about relationships, and specifically today I want us to focus in on community, which is a very broad thing. It's very big. And so I want us to think about what does it look like for us as a church community to move together in the same direction and to make sure that a place like Faith Chapel is a place and a people, right? Because the church is the people, it's all of us, that we are healthy for the foreseeable future. One of the things that I see as very, very important to our youth is that they know that they are seen, known, and loved. I think if we were all being honest, we all hope for that. We're all looking for a place to be accepted, a place to see authenticity, a place to find and receive love and truth and purpose. That's just part of the human condition. So we're going to explore what that looks like today, because I'm seeing three things specifically. As I was thinking about, what am I going to share in front of all of these people that I respect and admire and love, what are some things that really stand out specifically with youth, but that I could apply to everyone? So there are three major things that I'm seeing in our world today, in our culture, specifically in the United States, but I think it could be a global thing as well. And those three things is number one is increased division, right? We see this all over the place. There's this increased division in our world that is just running rampant. We're being pulled further and further apart from each other. We're being separated into subcategories and groups. And it's painful to see. And I see young people wrestling with this idea. Why is everything so divided? Why can't we all just get along? The second thing that I'm seeing especially is as I'm seeing our culture has become so consumer based and so focused on the individual. Hey, this is what you need in order to have a better life. This is what you need in order to enjoy yourself. This is who you need to be. Everything is sold to the individual, to the person. And the third thing that I see frequently is this constant pressure to filter through all of the voices that are claiming to have the answers. Anybody relate to that in this room? It feels like we're just being bombarded all the time with all of these voices on what's right, what do we need to do, who and what do we need to vote for, how do we need to dress, what do we need to buy, what do we need to do to fit in, what is or is not truth. And it's this constant, never-ending cycle, and I'm specifically seeing it with young people as they're being bombarded and they just don't know which way to go. And one of the things that I'm hearing consistently as we're searching through these voices and we're sorting through the division and we're trying to figure out what is best for me is I hear this phrase a lot. Where am I supposed to go for answers? Who can I actually trust, right? And then this is a big one too, especially for a group of people, young people that are growing up more and more and more. The numbers are increasing. Young people who are growing up not from a church background, right? Why the church? Why should I trust the church? The church seems just as divided as the rest of the world. It seems like the churches are struggling to get along with each other. It seems like churches are really just trying to focus in on ways to get people through the door because they're kind of bleeding. They're asking consistently from me, right? And there's so many different churches and so many different things coming out of churches. What is truth? Why should I trust the church? Is the Christian community really different from the rest of the world? So I want to look at that today. I want us to explore what that actually looks like because there is a way that we are supposed to be. And if we want to keep young people, the next generation, this specific place, Faith Chapel, this group, this community strong, if we want people to continue to come here and to learn about who Jesus is, then we have to address this. So we're going to look in our Bible today, and we're going to look in the book of Ephesians. And Ephesians, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. Ephesians is a book that is actually a letter that was written by the Apostle Paul. And Paul was what we would say is one of the first missionaries of the early church. And so what he would do is he would travel around to all of these different places and all these different cultures. And he would share the good news about Jesus and his life and the newness that he's brought to the earth. And so what he would do is he'd meet with some people and he would cultivate this relationship with God and this community of people who could be together. And then he would move on to another place, but then he would check back in with them. He would write letters of encouragement. And so this was written to a group of people in Ephesus, which is in modern day Turkey. It's on the western coast of Turkey. And it was a big trade route. It was a hub. It was one of the larger cities at the time. And it was filled with lots of different culture. Lots of different temples to different gods. And Paul is writing to this group of people in their context, in their place. And he starts off the first 3 chapters by talking about all of the amazing things that God has done for them. He says, listen, you are chosen. You are called. You have been given a fresh start, a new life. God loves you so much that he wants you to be a part of his family, which is this radical idea because you used to have to be born into the Jewish culture. You had to be a specific way. You had to be born of a certain lineage. And now he's saying, no, you belong. You have been chosen. You've been made new. You are a part of this family. And because of that, I have news for you on how to live. So we're going to pick up in Ephesians 4, verses 1 through 6. And this is how he starts. He says, as a prisoner for the Lord, and he's writing this from prison. Not a happy place to be writing from, but he's writing all of us encouragement from prison saying, I urge you, I'm asking you to live a life, to act worthy of the calling that you have received. He goes on to say, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. I don't know if you realize, but those are the 4 great American virtues, right? Humility, right? I just found this out. I was doing some research, and I found out that this year, the citizens of the United States of America, we voted ourselves the #1 humblest country in the world. Did you know that? It's pretty remarkable to be able to do that, right? We are not known for our humility. In fact, most of the rest of the world does not look to us for our humility. We're not known to be gentle people. I think aggressive maybe is more likely the word associated with us. Look at our political system. Woo! There's nothing gentle about that, right? Patient. All right, I have to confess before you this morning. Earlier this week, I was in a drive-through, and I was in the drive-through, I'm not making this up, for more than 10 minutes. Let that sink in for a sec, right? I was in the drive-through, and I was like, what is happening? What is taking these people so long to make my food for me so I don't have to make it myself, right? We are not a patient culture. We've not built up our world around patience. No, it's more like instant gratification. And bearing with one another in love, enduring the hard things together. I think that 2020 was a pretty good indicator of how we do that, right? Enduring difficult things and difficult people in love. It's not something that we're great at. So right out the gate, Paul goes, hey, chapters 1 through 3, I'm gonna build you up, and then here we go, boom. It's not as nice as when Alex said it, right? It's not as sweet. It's hard, it's difficult. He goes on to say, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Not just one effort, not just, all right, here we go. I have formulated a very carefully logical, crafted argument. I'm walking into this confrontation with this other person, and I'm ready to go. It's all good. It's foolproof. If this person doesn't agree, I'm gonna wipe my hands and they're done to me, right? It's saying make every effort. That's difficult. To keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And here's why. Because there is one body and one Spirit. Just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all. Paul is talking about this oneness. And it's somewhat of a foreign concept to us because I think we as humans, just the way our brains work, we're very good at splitting ourselves or other people into categories. It's easier for us to understand. So my first point today is to share this with you. In a world of increasing division, we are called to unity. Where the world tells us that we need to be divided, we as the community of Christians need to be united. And I want to say something to that for a second. I don't think that unity here necessarily means you have to be in full agreement all the time, right? When my wife and I are trying to parent our daughter and we're needing to either teach her something or discipline her or whatever that looks like, we don't necessarily always agree on how to do that. We might have a difference in opinion, and we have had a difference in opinion on how we address certain situations. But here's what I know. When I decided to enter into the covenant of marriage with my wife, we were united. We were a team. And because of the common love that we have for our daughter, our desire, the common desire to love her well and to raise her up to love Jesus, it's okay if we have disagreements. But we will always be on the same team. You see, unity, Paul is saying, is accomplished through remembering the oneness of who we love and serve, and that is Jesus. And it's also accomplished through those 4 great American virtues of humility and gentleness and patience and bearing with one another and love and making every effort to do that. So Paul goes on and he says, listen, I know that this is challenging, okay? This is tough. I'm hitting you with this stuff right out the gate. But here's what God has done. And so he goes on in verses 11 through 13. He says, so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Here's what he's saying. He's saying, listen, I know it's challenging, but I've given you a way. I'm gifting certain people to be able to help lead you. And it's people like Pastor Nate and Pastor Stan and Pastor Brooks, right? These people who've been gifted by the Lord to come and to teach and to help us be prepared for what? So that we can just internalize all of this knowledge? No, to prepare us for acts of service to each other. The second point that I have today is, in a self-centered world, we are called to serve others. We have to move ourselves from being self-centered to serve-centered. And to do this, I want to use an example. I want to call out somebody. I think they're in the room today, this morning for this service, and they weren't for other ones. But I got some pictures of this person. This person's name is Steve Hovis. For those of you who know and love Steve Hovis, he's an amazing individual. He's awesome, and I've got some pictures of him. He's the guy with the mustache, sleeping with all of the chaos going around him, okay? So this is up at our camp on the boulder, and literally this room is filled with people just like running around, dancing, laughing, screaming. And this man, for whatever reason, has found the peace of the Lord in ways that most of us never have fully been able to experience, but we all strive to have someday, right? So I've got another picture of him. This is one of my students. She's sitting there just mimicking him. He's out like a light. He has no idea. So I got this picture. Those two pictures were from 2020. Then 2021, where is Steve? He's sleeping on a bench outside, and we're in the middle of a night game here. Like, there are students running around screaming, and he's just laying there, just sleeping like a baby. And then this year was my favorite, I think. He really got into it. He dressed up for one of our games, and he's just such a delight. But the reason that I want to talk about Steve for a second is because Steve, since the time I've been young in this church, Steve has always been somebody who has been faithfully serving the people around him well. And whether it be like a Billings and Beyond project that, going to a local school and helping clean up, or to the zoo to help with improvements, or going up to camp to help with improvements, right? Or whether it was, this is for me personally, where I just love and adore him, is he comes and he serves junior high students on Wednesdays faithfully. He's been doing it for like the past 2 years. And I know that there's some students, right, that like they walk in for the first time and they see this dude with a mustache. And they're like, what is this dude doing here? But he walks up to him right away, and he's got some candy in his hand. He goes, hey, my name's Steve. He holds out his hand and shakes their hand, and they're like, oh, candy, sweet, that's awesome. He also does this thing where he like sprays whipped cream on his hand. He's teaching our students how to do this, and then hit their hand and try to catch it in their mouth. Like, that's Steve. And the students, they love him so much. Like, whenever we have like a stage game or something, he's just like, everybody just is like, who else should we get up here? And they're like, Steve, right? But he's just got this way about him. And the thing I love about Steve is he's really just embraced fully what it means to serve other people without having a need to receive something in return, right? Serving junior high students is awesome. There's not a whole lot for a 64-year-old man to receive necessarily serving junior high students. He just lives out what it means to serve others. And when we do this as a community overall, when we build each other up, we mature. And we're not as easily tossed back and forth by the world's cunning and craftiness and deceitful ways. When we're in an active environment of unity, where people are collectively serving each other, we're less likely to focus on ourselves. And that is a beautiful thing. If we're wanting to be different and stand out in our world, especially to our youth and to young people, we have to fully embody what it looks like to serve others without expecting anything in return. So Paul understands that this is a challenge. He's saying, okay, I get it. I know it's tough. It's a challenge. But you know what the world looks like. You feel the voices competing. You see the brokenness. You've experienced that brokenness yourself. That wrestling with what is right, what is wrong, constantly feeling like things are shifting, you're consistently politically incorrect, whatever it is. He says, you know, but now there's a difference. You, the church, the community of believers are different. And this is what he has to say in Ephesians 4:21 through 24. He says, so since you have heard about Jesus and learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. And instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. This leads to my third point this morning, which is this. We have to be a people, a community who's willing to take off the old, the human nature, and put on the new, the God nature. The way that God created and intended for us to be. And to illustrate this, I want to use an example. I want to talk about smell, sense of smell, okay? So I want you to picture like one of the grosser smells that you've experienced in your life. It could be a skunk. For me, it's rotten cauliflower, okay? Horrible. One of the worst, probably the worst smell I've ever experienced in my life. I want you to just really take it in, okay? To get a few good breaths in this morning. It's just what you wanted coming to church. But I want us to think about, as we walk throughout life, I want us to picture that the world, depending on where we're at, who we're around, we're constantly being sprayed with scent. Okay, and some of it's good and some of it's bad. But I want us to think about, we don't really have, when we're walking in the ways of the world, we don't really have a full sense of smell. We're blinded to the smell. And maybe every once in a while we kind of catch a whiff and we're like, what was that? What is that stink? But we don't really fully know. And what Paul is saying is, listen, because you've heard the good news and you know who Jesus is, he is renewing you. He is giving you the ability to smell again. And now that we have that, we realize, woo, I stink. That's not good. And we want to take that off. We want to get rid of that. We're like, that's negatively affecting me and the people around me. I don't want that anymore. And we help each other as a community. This is where the community comes in, right? As we help each other. There's some people who've got better sniffers than us, right? And they're going, hey, whoo, that's stinky. That's not good for you. That's what we're doing with our youth, right? As we see a student acting a certain way that's not good for them or in alignment with the way that God created them to be, we go, hey, this is not good for you. Let me help you. Let me make you aware of this. And we do that together as a community of people committed to each other. And we do it with humility and gentleness and patience, bearing with each other's stink, right? That's what it looks like to be a part of a healthy community. My wife made a really good point last night. She said, you focused a lot on the bad stink, Mikey. Why don't you talk about the good stuff, right? I said, yeah, that's a great point. So when we start to be transformed, when we start to put on that new, we start to give off a different type of aroma, right? We're created to be different. And this is what Paul says in Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2. He says, so imitate God, therefore, in everything that you do. Imitate him, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Jesus modeled what it looked like to be a pleasing aroma, to be a scent in the world that was desperate for something good and refreshing. And Paul is urging us to be like Jesus. And when we choose to do this, when we choose to imitate God, to authentically live as a community of people, united, serving each other, and constantly being transformed and seeking this new nature, casting off the old human nature. When we choose to do this together as a community in relationship, we grow stronger, we are more mature, and we become more confident in the truth. We're less likely to be swayed by the world and what they have to say. We get to be standing firm upon the truth. And because of this, we will become a pleasing aroma, and we will stand out in a stinky world. So I want to ask us the question this morning: what is the aroma of our church community? Faith Chapel, what is our aroma to the world? I think throughout the years we've been very faithful in having a pleasing aroma. I want to ask, what does it look like that the Christian community in Billings, the Christian community in our nation and beyond, what is the aroma of the church? I think that this is what we have to answer in order to provide a solution to our youth. They're smelling all over, searching for something. We need to be a pleasing aroma. One of the reasons why I love this church dearly is because I do see this happening. I just got back from a month of camp where there was a pleasing aroma, not like really like a pleasing aroma, like those students really stink. Like some of you need to tell your kids to wear deodorant, right? And take a shower sometimes. Okay, that's my advice to you. Right, but I saw some spiritual deodorant being put on. Okay, up at camp, where students were loving each other well. Students are serving each other in various ways. One of the beautiful ways that I saw is they bought boxes of root beer floats and were walking around just handing them out to people that they didn't know. Here you go. Here you go. That's beautiful. And I saw transformation, that newness, that new nature starting to really, really take root. And one of the things that makes me so excited is I saw that up at camp, but that's happening every single week here. That's what we're striving to do, is to be the place where these students feel seen and known and loved by God. Pastor Nate always closes his message by saying, to be the hands and the feet and the mouthpiece of Jesus. And I'm just want to ask us can we see this with a renewed perspective this week? Can we think about this in a different way this week? Can we see and know and love people in a new way this week? Can we live in unity and genuinely serve each other from a place of selflessness and allow God to continue to transform our hearts and our minds this week? In the words of Paul, he said, I urge you, my friends, to the church in Ephesus. I urge us, Faith Chapel family, to live the life worthy of the call that we have received. We are the church. We are the body. We are the ones who have received the call. So let's respond. Let's make sure that this place is always a pleasing aroma to those who step into this building, and that as we go out from this building, that we are a pleasing aroma to our world.